Support for the Dice Tower comes from listeners like you and from the Op, also known as USAopoly. Thanks for your support. The Dice Tower, episode 657.
Oh my goodness.
Welcome to the Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, Geoff's been solving a lot of Jigsaw puzzles, and Tom attempts to review 25 games in 11 minutes. I still don't think he can do it. Plus, we answer questions from the mailbag, and then it's go time for O time as we run through our top 10 games that start with the letter O. I'm Eric Summerer, and here's your host, the Otto Octavius of board gaming, Tom Vassell.
Well, this is confusing. Am I a hero or a bad guy?
Isn't every villain the hero of their own story?
No, there's some that are just bad. Carnage is not a hero
I think.
No, Carnage doesn't even pretend.
I think Doc Ock thinks he's doing the right thing.
Doc Ock has occasionally done the right thing. In fact, recently, more so than not.
Okay. Well, then you can go with that timeline.
It's not that timeline. It's actually our timeline.
Sure. You keep telling yourself that.
See what happened. See what happened was Dr. Octopus and Spider-Man were fighting, and Dr. Octopus was dying. But at the very last second, he switched his inside person with Peter Parker, and then instead Peter Parker died in Doc Ock's body, and Doc Octopus was living in Peter Parker's body. But when that happened, he got all Peter Parker's memories and decided he would be good, but that he would be a better Spider-Man because Peter Parker was kind of slacking at the job. So he called himself Superior Spider-Man. And for a year, until Marvel found a way out of it, he went around and really beat up criminals. He was like Punisher Spider-Man. It was a pretty good story, actually.
Okay.
So,
that's fascinating. I just thought you had your fingers in everything.
Yes, thank you. Okay, folks, well, welcome to the Dice Tower. I'm Tom Vassell.
Hi, I'm Eric Summerer.
Somewhat of a Marvel nerd. But yes, we're here. It is sometime in 2020. It's probably October or something. I don't know.
I have no idea. I think literally we're into May. It's May. Welcome to May.
It is May, and it was funny because when we started April, we had already been locked down for 2 weeks at that point. Mm-hmm. And I said, all right, let's cross off the days. And when April's over, freedom. I like halfway through April, I was like, okay, I should stop talking about that.
Uh-huh. Yep. Yeah, how you feeling about your decision to do live broadcasts every day until this is over?
Well, most of the Dice Tower team has pitched in to help.
Oh, wait. I do that.
You do it once every 2 weeks. That is correct.
That is true.
Alrighty, so.
Usually when Tom says something like that, he's making fun of me, but I'm in there.
He definitely was, because last week I said, hey, Eric, if you want to do another one, you could. And he said, I'll get back to you.
That is true, and I did not do that.
Roy said, I even made him a thumbnail. I was like, all right, I'll tell him and make him feel bad.
I'll do it. I'd like to.
Well, folks, we're glad. And then, yeah, as Eric says, yes, every night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which might be morning for you, actually, but just come on and join us, and we talk. And we've talked with so many different people. Through the industry, there's just all kinds of different people, from publishers to designers to other people in podcasting to just random folks. It's been a good time. And even though we are all stuck at home, we are still getting games played. Because Eric and I, can you imagine if this happened 6 years ago? This would be more problematic.
It would be. You'd be hearing a lot more Haba games, I think.
We'd be like, welcome to the Haba Dice Tower, sponsored by Haba.
Not to say that Haba is bad, but it would be a lot more concentrated. Yes.
Yes, it would be. But it's not. So I'm going to let Eric go first because he's talking about a theme I like, but I bet you the game's not good.
Well, let's find out. The first one I've been playing is, I've not played the physical copy. This is a fan-made game called The Legend of Zelda Clockwork Realm. The designer's name is Chris J. Davis, and it's available for free on Board Game Geek as a print-and-play game, or you can play a tabletop simulator module, which is also free if you have the tabletop simulator system.
Well, it has to be free. Otherwise, Nintendo would come in with the big sue your butt off stick.
Absolutely. But this one did look interesting, so I grabbed the module. I've been playing with my brother out in California. Clockwork Realm is it's sort of a dungeon crawl adventure. It's a mini campaign. You play over 4 missions with progressively larger dungeons, and your job is to explore these dungeon tiles. Most of the tiles are face down at the beginning of an adventure, and your multiple links, your different colored links, running around and exploring the dungeon. And each dungeon tile is going to have different entrances in the orthogonal directions and bad guys that you have to fight. And sometimes there are special rooms like the compass or the map room or the big key room. And eventually you have to discover where the big bad is, the boss of the dungeon. You have to find the big key of the dungeon, activate that room. Then you have the way to defeat the big bad and eventually defeat them, which will earn you shards of the Triforce and possibly some treasures, which you can continue with you into the next dungeon. And then after you've done 3 regular dungeons, you do a 4th Ganon dungeon and hopefully win the game. I have really enjoyed this game. I wasn't sure. You never know with a fan-made project how things are going to go. It is a deck-building it's sort of a slow-motion deck-building game. You have your own deck with some basic cards that allow you to do the actions, movement, and interacting with stuff like switches and puzzles, and combat, attack value. And when you face an enemy, you may have to spend a certain amount of attack or movement to get rid of them. You may be able to just simply avoid them, which won't earn you any rewards, but you'll live. Or you can take damage, and if you lose all of your hearts, you die, which is not permanent in this game. You simply have to reset. You have to discard some cards. Every time you run through your deck, you have to spend what's called a hero token. And if you run out of hero tokens and still need to draw more cards, you lose. You earn more of these hero tokens by activating those special rooms, the map room, the compass room, the boss room. And so the race is we have to find these rooms, explore quickly before we run out of time in our deck. You can also acquire items and treasures which will add to your deck and give you special powers. Those treasures can be equipped, and then that can make it easier to defeat bad guys and give you special powers that can activate every round. The whole thing has a pretty nice progression. It was moving a little slowly the first time we played, just figuring out the rules and how everything moves. You're rotating. I forgot to mention this. You explore the temple, but it's all a random assortment of tiles. So how are the doors going to match up for everything? They don't. But many of the tiles have gears and mechanisms that slide the rooms around. So by activating a particular type of gear, you may be able to rotate the room you're in or rotate that one and then slide like a rack and pinion sort of thing. One room turns and the other, like an adjoining row, rotates or slides down. Or you can turn an entire group of 4 rooms or all sorts of crazy machinations to get the rooms to line up and get the doors to line up so you can do what you want to do. That is really neat. You've got the exploration and then you have this puzzle of how you're going to figure all of it out. I have enjoyed it quite a bit. We are still in our campaign. We've played through a couple of the dungeons, and my youngest also saw us playing and said, "Dad, can we play our own campaign?" So now I've got 2 concurrent campaigns going of The Legend of Zelda Clockwork Realm. If you're interested, check it out on Board Game Geek, or if you have Tabletop Simulator, there is a module there for free.
Okay, the first game I'm going to talk about, I was not expecting to be very good. This is Marvel Infinity Gauntlet. Have you heard of this one, Eric?
Well, I mean, there's so many Marvel games. I know there's a Command game that has the Infinity Gauntlet, but this isn't that yet, right?
This is a much smaller game. It's from Z-Man Games, coming out quite soon. And this, in the very corner of the box, says a love letter game.
Oh.
So this is essentially Marvel Love Letter, but happily they did that tiny little love letter game in the corner, which makes more sense.
Okay.
Because Batman Love Letter is still kind of a weird game to bring out.
Yep.
So this has nothing about love or letters in it at all, but it's based on that system. It's not designed by the same designer. It's designed by a different one because this is a one versus all game.
Oh.
Now, it could be a 2-player game. Thanos versus one player who plays the Avengers, but you can play up to 5 other players and they all play against Thanos. Thanos and the other players, they each have a small deck of cards. One of them is, I think, 13 cards, one's 18 cards, something like that. And when it's your turn, everyone has one card in their hand, and on your turn, you'll draw a card and then play one of your 2 cards. Except when it's Thanos' turn, he has 2 cards in his hand, so he draws one, he gets to play one of 3 different cards.
Ah, okay.
You play these cards, and your goal is to attack the other team. So heroes might want to attack Thanos, and there's different ways to do that. You might have a card that says, guess a number. If Thanos has it in his hand, it's defeat it, and Thanos loses a point. There are cards that say, attack a card in his hand. So then you show a card from your hand, you take a card from his hand, and whichever one's higher is defeat it, and that person loses a hit point. When you lose a certain number of hit points, your team loses. Now, that sounds very, very basic, but it's well put together. Thanos also has 6 cards in his deck that are Infinity Stones. If he manages to get all these in play, he also wins that way.
Uh-huh.
And there are cards that will give you tokens that are +2, and if you are attacked, you must add these tokens to them. Obviously, that helps you in the upcoming battle. So it's kind of a feint and jumping around. Players are not allowed to communicate to each other, A, what's in their hand, or B, what they've seen in Thanos' hand, because there's cards that let you look at a card in their hand. But you are allowed to communicate about stuff that you can see on the table. You can still communicate to some degree.
Okay.
But you can set up things like, if it's, let's say it's me and Eric playing against Mandy, and Mandy's Thanos, I can play a card that says, let a teammate look at a card from Mandy's hand. So Eric looks at a card. Then Eric plays, guess a number. And it's like, well, I think I can figure out the number to guess.
Right.
And I will tell you, of all the love letters, this is hands down the best one.
Okay.
Now, part of it, obviously I like the Marvel theme, but I don't like the Marvel theme so much that I honestly went into this expecting to dislike it. Mm-hmm. But I really like the one versus all aspect. It works really well. And it's also a short game. Love Letter was good, but Love Letter did kind of drag out because you'd play like a thing of Love Letter and then someone would get a heart. And then, all right, let's play again. And you could play like 8 times in a row or something. Mm-hmm. This is one game. All right. You keep track of the health of Thanos or the heroes, and then Thanos gets out the Infinity Stones. So, I don't know. I really like it. There's a little bit of theme in it. Not a ton. It's just card play. But it's very small, very portable, good quality, great art. It's an all-around excellent package.
Well, so a lot of the other...
I was really surprised by this one.
A lot of the other Love Letter games are sort of the same thing with just a different, maybe one rule tweak.
I agree. This one felt very different than the others. And in fact, they didn't even put Seiji Kanai's name as a designer. They just said based on his game.
Okay.
It has some of the same mechanisms, but it's a very different game.
Okay.
I felt anyway. Marvel Infinity Gauntlet coming from Z-Man Games.
Next game for me to talk about is one I've circled back to after a few years, actually. The Pathfinder adventure card game has hit the table quite a bit lately. My kids said, hey, can we play the Pathfinder adventure card game? I really want to get back into that. My eldest was playing with me for the last few adventures. We had worked our way through. I have the entire...
I already saw your tweet about this. I know where this is going.
Oh, did you? Great. Rise of the Rune Lords box. And we had gotten through the first 2 adventure decks. So I was ready to start Adventure Deck 3. And I said, yes, all right, boys, let's do it. In fact, we'll figure out a way to get my youngest involved and have him start a character, and we'll just start from Adventure Deck 3. Here we go. And my kids are like, well, no, Dad, we want to start over. We want to start from the beginning and work our characters up to where you are. And so I had to reset everything. I didn't fully reset the game. If you haven't played the adventure card game, it has this sort of living system where as you get through new adventures, you add more cards into the pool of cards that you'll draw from as you explore locations and acquire new items. And so as you cycle through these, the, say, weapons that you run into are going to get better and better and better. And eventually there's a system where you start removing cards from the system. And I was just at that point. But no, we had to reset, And so then I escorted them through the first dungeon with my powered-up character, which made it sort of easy for me, but they had their first-level characters, and I know I'm not allowed to get any of the rewards for the missions I've already completed. That's fine. So I was escorting them along, and then we finished successfully, and they get their rewards for completing the dungeon, and then they're like, Dad, can you set it up for just us next time? You don't have to play with us next time. So they've done multiple missions now without me while I'm working, actually, which is fine. So I'll be working in the studio and I'll hear them playing on the table after they've done their homework for the day, which is great. But I need to make sure that I pay attention because as soon as they finish Adventure Deck 2, I am back in there because it's been years and I want to play the Deck 3. Anyway, still enjoying, and my kids are now enjoying the Pathfinder adventure card game.
Have you noticed this is a theme?
I have, and it's disturbing.
I'm enjoying it. Alrighty.
Someone is.
Okay, the next game I'm going to talk about, since Eric is going back in time and talking about older games he's revisiting, I will do the same, and that's Rise of Queensdale. This is a legacy game that was, when did this come out? 2018, so a couple years ago. We played it on the Dice Tower. We played, I don't remember, 5 or 6 games of it. We reviewed it, and I said, we're going to get back and finish this, and we never did. And part of that was we were playing on a pasted-up version of it because we got a really early copy of it. It was good, but I've now was like, I'd like to finish it, but, 2 of the people in the game are no longer here. Also, we're in quarantine, and I think my kids could handle this. So we've started it. Now, we're only 2 games in, but it was really fun because they didn't know what the concept of a legacy game was. So we played the first game, and then I explained at the end of the game, and also, now we're going to be able to put stickers on our dice and change them. And you get this special ability that no one else has, and it just blew their minds. So we will see. Now, they're not like begging to play it more, but they didn't argue when I got it out again. And, I mean, there is Animal Crossing, that it's competing with.
Yeah, that's hard.
But I'm enjoying it. I'm not convinced the game is that great. I think it's an okay Euro, but I want to see how it opens up. I mean, I'm looking at it again over the course of time, right? So I already, the first few things that happen aren't going to surprise me, but I want to see how it opens up over time. I think this is one that you never got around to, right?
No, I haven't had a chance to play this one.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped about it. I'm going to make one small house rule to it. Because essentially what the game does is you have to get to a certain goal. Just for folks listening, basically you roll dice each turn. You use those dice to do different actions, and those actions will give you victory points. You can build buildings. You can move up on a morale track. There's different ways to get victory points. And the first person to get to 10 victory points is the winner of the game. But then that person's goal goes to 16 victory points for the next game.
Huh.
Now they get more victory points for doing actions. The number of points you get for doing actions will change, but it changes at a lesser rate than the increase in points.
Okay.
And new content comes into the game only when someone gets to the next level.
All right.
So my daughter won the first game, and then she was on to level 2, and we're on level 1. Then she won the second game too, actually, barely. I almost won the second game. So I got far enough, though, that I moved up a level, and she moved up a level. So the next game, we're going to open new content again. But then, and this happened when I played it the last time, if one of the other girls wins, there won't be new content. And then if one of the other girls wins, there won't be new content again. There's not new content until someone moves up. And in fact, we could technically have 4 games with no new content because both my daughters could win and go up to the second level. Then I could win and go to the third level. Then both of them could win and go to the third level.
Right.
And I feel like that's too many, right? That's much
a lot.
of a mundane experience. So I'm going to play that when there's only one person left at the bottom level, they automatically will go up.
Oh, okay.
It's a minor thing. It's not a big deal. When you go up a level, you get a little reward. You pick from some rewards, and so they're going to get the last reward anyway. But it keeps the game from dragging.
Yeah, it's sort of like you're playing that game without actually playing it. You're playing
and the
catch-up
game has different ways that it puts in catch-up mechanisms anyway, so it's fairly likely that the person who is behind will win.
Mm-hmm.
So that being the case, I want to say there's, I don't know how many different things around the track. I want to say like there's 10 maybe. Maybe there's only 8 or something, but still, 8 times 4 is 32 games. And while I like the game a lot, I'm not sure I'm in for the 32 game of it. But 8 times 3 is 24, and it won't be just 3, right? Sometimes it will change. And at, like, let's say it's like 18, 19, 20 games, that's much more manageable.
Sure.
Anyway, that's Rise of Queensdale from Ravensburger. I really do enjoy it. It's by the Brands, who do a lot of the escape room, exit the room games and other things. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I was able to find this for a fairly inexpensive price. I mean, considering it's a legacy game, it has tons of content in it. So I figured we'd give it a whirl.
Cool. You mentioned house rules. I should mention before I leave the Pathfinder adventure card game that I have instituted the house rule that there is no permadeath of the characters. Like, officially, if you're playing through your character and you have like a deck of 15 cards, and if you lose all of your cards, if they're all discarded due to damage that you take, and you can't draw back up to your hand size at the end of your turn, you die. And if you're not resurrected somehow by the end of the game, you're supposed to just take all those cards and put them back in the box and you're done. Considering how the 8-year-old would respond to that, we have not. No. If they die...
I don't think this 43-year-old would respond to that very well.
At this point, I would not respond well to my character, like the ones that had worked all the way through the 2 adventure decks, and no. No, I do not want to start over with them. So yes, we've instituted that. Last for me to talk about, I was all set to talk about Board and Dice's new release, Traintopia. And then I listened to Mandy and Suzanne last week, and they got there first, darn it. But anyway, Traintopia, just really quickly, a brand new tile-laying, tile-drafting train game that I played with my kids. They played, I believe, on Tabletopia. One of the digital platforms. I have the physical copy of the game, and I played with my kids. I echo most of what Suzanne and Mandy said. I enjoyed the game. It plays very quickly. It's quick drafting, very simple actions. My children had no trouble picking up on what they needed to do. I also think that the train scoring at the end, you draft these trains, and they can earn you points if you have money tokens next to the track. It really wasn't worth as much as using those money tokens to do extra actions and getting extra tiles in the middle of the game. I had an issue at the end of the game where I couldn't draft a particular type of tile. You get more points if you have a blue starting point and a red end point on your track. And I got no endpoints in the last drafting round of the game, even though I was going first. I was perfectly poised to end a very high-scoring track, and then I got nothing because there were no endpoints. There's like a bonus at the end for whoever has the fewest points during the course of the game. And my kids were both lower scoring than I was, and they drafted the 2 things I could have used in the final scoring. So they're smart, but they took the stuff away, and so I ended up not winning because my kids were able to do that final draft and pass me at the end. The only issue...
Did you have any problems with the game? Oh, there we go.
The one issue I had is that there appears to be a missing token in the box. There are...
Yeah, you're not the only person. It is.
Yes, so there's this stack of cards that tell you what you are drafting in any given round of the game, and if you're playing with enough players to use all of those cards, there are 6 cards that give you these train tokens, and only 5 trains in the game. And it's not like my copy was missing one. It actually says in the rulebook there are 5 train meeples, but there are 6 cards, so they probably added a card in the card distribution without upping the number of wooden pieces that they needed. I don't know. I have not heard anything that they're planning to, fix this in any way. But you could easily just use any token. You could grab a train from Ticket to Ride, and it would do the same thing if you really ran into that problem.
Well, that's actually my only negative thing about the game.
Okay.
Is I feel like the train is the weakest thing.
It does.
I almost never draft a train.
Yeah, well, I certainly didn't until I started near the end of the game sort of falling into it, and I could get the full. It's only worth 10 points though, and if you can get a good long 8-tile track that gets a doubler on it, that's I think worth 20 points. So it's rarely worth it, at least in my opinion.
I think so.
I did
The
enjoy it.
stations are way better than the trains.
Yeah.
I didn't actually notice it was missing because it was the one bonus thing that people didn't really want.
Right. If not all of them are drafted when they show up on the cards, because you draft until there's one item left, one tile or one wooden piece, and that goes back into the supply, and you just continue on. In this case, if everybody took the trains, though, when they showed up, you would run out.
Alrighty. Well, let me jump here into the last game of the day, and that is Monumental. This is a game that was on Kickstarter 3 years ago, maybe? Actually, it was only 2 years ago, but they've been talking about this for a really long time. It raised quite a bit of money on Kickstarter, 600,000 euros. That's a pretty big Kickstarter. This is from Funforge Game, and the designer is Matthew Dunstan. You might know him from Elysium and other fantastic games. So this is a Civ game. Again, realizing I know that no game can be a complete civilization game, but if you have the base game, you get 5 different civilizations to pick from, like the Egyptians, the Japanese, Chinese, Greeks, and the Danes, I believe, are the 5 initial races. And you get a specialized deck of cards. That most of the cards are the same, although the artwork's different based on your Civ. And then there's a board in the middle of the table made up of different hexes that represent different territories, and you have a bunch of troops on these boards. You're going to lay out in front of you a grid of 3x3 cards. That's your city. And you'll just shuffle your deck and put out those 9 cards. On your turn, you will activate 1 row and 1 column in that city. You tap all the cards a little bit, and then you use them. Now, at the beginning of the game, most of these cards just give you some resources. There's 3 different resources. There's production, there is science, and there's military. These are temporary resources that you only have that turn. And in fact, if you haven't figured it out by now, this game is a deck builder. So it's kind of like Dominion, and you have gold, except there's 3 different resources. And they have tokens that you can take to remember how many you have on your turn, but it's pretty simple. Production lets you buy better cards to put into your city. Cards that will give you 2 resources. Or there's a line of cards that comes out, and this line is actually stacked in 3 different eras. So you'll see Wonders of the World come, or things. And that you can start building. A Wonder of the World often you have to build it twice to build it before it goes in your deck. And then when you activate them, they can do all sorts of things. Some will kick cards out of your deck. Some will let you reinforce a card. That means when the round's over, you discard all the cards you use, but a reinforced card stays there, which means you can use it another turn. And so there's all kinds of cool effects that you can have with these. And then, like I said, at the end of your turn, you'll discard all these. Science lets you buy more science cards to put in your deck. Science cards are important because they're worth points at the end of the game, but also when a science card is drawn, you put it underneath another card. And when you activate that card, you get both. So instead of getting 5 cards on your turn, you'll get 6 or more if you have more science in your deck. And then military points are used to move your troops on the board. You're running your troops around the board, taking over territories. You'll conquer the barbarians at the beginning. You'll turn their tiles over, which will give you resources. You can attack another player. It's pretty simple combat. If Eric has 3 people in a territory and it has a defensive value of 2, I need to use 5 military points to move 5 soldiers in. His guys are defeated. They all go back to his starting spot, and he can run them out again. It's not too evil of a game, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And then there's little trading towns you can go to and get resources from them. There's 2 other resources you can get in the game. Gold, which is a wild resource, can be used as any of the 3 types, and you can keep it from round to round. And culture. Culture is extremely important because each player has 5 culture cards. The first one costs 1 culture to play, then 2 culture, etc. When you play a culture card, it gives you a special ability, and it gives you an immediate bonus.
Okay.
When you play your second culture card, you replace the first culture card. You get a new special ability, but you get the bonuses from both cards. So if you get all 5 culture cards out, you get the bonuses from all 5 cards.
All right.
But what's interesting is you're trying to figure out the right order to play them in because they give you special abilities. I might play a culture card that says every time you conquer a territory, you get a gold. Well, that makes sense to play it in the beginning of the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I had one, I was playing the Egyptians, and it said, when I build a wonder of the world, I could pay one less resource. Well, when's the best time to play that? And I really like that aspect of the game. Also, all 5 culture cards are different than everyone else's, giving each civilization their own flair. This is not a long game. It is 90 minutes max, really. It is fantastic production. I have the deluxe version, which has miniatures in it, but I think they're like tokens, for the normal game.
Okay.
But I didn't even care about that. The card artwork is phenomenal. And it's a basic civilization game. Although it's fun, like I was the Egyptians and built the Statue of Liberty, because why not?
Why not? Yeah.
And I love deck building games, and this one has a different feel to it.
Okay.
Because you have 9 cards, and you're going to activate 5 of them, and you're trying to figure out what good cards. And when you buy a card, by the way, it goes on top of your deck, so you bring it out the next turn. And that makes me happy. So this is a fabulously produced game. It's a lot of fun. I think it's going to get a lot of positive buzz. I really enjoyed it. So that is Monumental.
Yeah, you've piqued my interest. Funforge, huh? Okay, cool.
And that's it for games. Before we jump to Geoff, who's going to talk about game adjacency, I do want to mention, last time, there's a couple things I'd like to clear up. First of all, in no way, shape, or form was I even hinting that the podcast was about to end.
Oh.
And I appreciate the very positive buzz that we got, and people are like, please don't stop. We hadn't been planning to.
Right.
All I was saying was we got very little feedback. We were wondering if people were listening to it. That's all.
It was more of a, are you still out there sort of thing? Yeah.
Yes, and so we do appreciate that. And again, if you hear a topic or something or want to respond, we love to, hear that. I read everything in the forums. I really do. So, or at least I read everything in the Board Game Geek forums. The Facebook one's a little harder to keep up with, just because the way Facebook is, it stuff flies by really fast.
Yeah, it's very busy.
But I do read that stuff, and I'm glad for all the nice words that people said. To that end, stay tuned. We have a contest we're going to talk about, and I'm going to talk about that right before the top 10.
What?
Before then, I also want to mention, if you want to sponsor the Dice Tower, if you like what we've done, we mentioned that the backer kit is open. It is. You can jump into that. If you miss some of the promos or stuff that you want, you can go to dicetowerkickstarter.com. All right. Now I'll pass the torch to Geoff.
3, 2, 1, go.
It's time for Game Tech with Geoff Engelstein, where we find out how games really work.
Under the current circumstances, sales for Jigsaw puzzles have gone through the roof. They're a great activity for families to do together in low intensity, so you can do them while enjoying other activities. I guess they're officially not games, but I think games and puzzles are close cousins, and they're both made by Ravensburger. But regardless, you're stuck listening to me talk about Jigsaw puzzles for the next few minutes, so sit back and enjoy a bit of the math of Jigsaw puzzles. First, let's talk about the pieces. In traditional Jigsaw puzzles, the pieces have the rounded parts that stick out and the holes that receive them. These are commonly called tabs and blanks, although there are tons of different terms like sockets or voids. I'm just going to stick with tabs, the parts that stick out, and blanks, the empty spaces inside the pieces. Now, a standard Jigsaw puzzle piece is rectangular and has one tab or blank on each side. That means that if you ignore the size and assume pieces are square, there are only 6 types of pieces. Most people are surprised by this, so let's break it down. If you have 2 tabs and 2 blanks, there are 2 ways that you can arrange them on the square. The 2 tabs across from each other or next to each other on adjacent sides. So that's 2 possible configuration of tabs and blanks. The other 4 are 3 tabs and 1 blank, 3 blanks and 1 tab, 4 tabs, or 4 blanks. So that's 6 altogether. Now, if you think about a piece with 3 tabs and 1 blank, you can always rotate it around so that all the tabs and blanks line up. This is called a transformational symmetry. Transformations like this are an important part of a branch of mathematics called topology. Topology is the study of the fundamental properties of shapes, even when you can bend them and twist them any way you want. For example, from a topology standpoint, a square is the same as a triangle. I can pull and bend them to overlap. But a square with a hole in the middle is not the same as a square without a hole. No matter how much I bend and twist it, I can't precisely overlap the shapes without tearing, which is not permitted. Now, for puzzle pieces, we can set up two rules about our transformations. Tabs and blanks can never be created or destroyed, and tabs and blanks can never be moved past each other around the edges. With these two rules, we have just 6 categories of pieces with 4 total tabs or blanks. They might not fit into each other since we can't actually stretch a puzzle piece, but on a fundamental level, they are the same. Now let's put the individual pieces aside and look at another aspect of jigsaw puzzles. How does the difficulty change as the number of pieces increases? We all know that a 2,000 piece puzzle will take longer than a 1,000 piece puzzle, but how much longer? Let's start, as scientists and mathematicians often do, with a very simple model. Let's assume that you are a very bad solver and take a simple approach. You ignore color and shape, and for each spot, you just draw a piece at random and try it. If it doesn't fit, set it aside and take a new piece. Keep going until you find one that fits, then pick a new spot to fill in and start all over again with the remaining pieces. So, if you have 1,000 pieces remaining, you'll just try the 1,000 pieces one after the next. After you find that one, you'll pick a new spot, but now you have 999 pieces to go through. On average, you'll have to go through half the pieces remaining each time in order to find the right one. So, if you have 1,000 pieces to go through, on average, you'll find the right one in 500 tries. So the total number of tries for a 1,000-piece puzzle will be half of 999 plus 998 plus 997 plus 996, and so on. This is a triangular number formula, so called because it's like laying out bowling pins in a triangle, 1 in the first row, 2 in the second, 3 in the third, and so on, and then counting up how many total pins you have. Triangular numbers come up all the time in board games. There are lots of set collection games that give you points based on triangular sequences 1, 3, 6, 10, 15, and so on. Anytime you see that sequence, you're dealing with triangular numbers. Now, there is a formula for calculating the sum of a series of numbers from 1 to n, which is what we've got here. It is n times n plus 1 divided by 2. Now, in this case, we actually need to divide by 4 for our puzzle calculation since we want the average, but basically, it grows like n squared, since the numerator is n times n plus 1. So what does this basic solving algorithm teach us about puzzle complexity? If the solve time is what we call order n squared, that means that if you have twice as many pieces, it takes 4 times as long to solve. If you have 3 times as many pieces, it takes 9 times as long. To put this into some real terms, let's say it takes you 5 minutes to solve a small 100-piece puzzle. If you try to do a 1,000-piece puzzle, which has 10 times as many pieces, it will take 100 times as long. So 500 minutes, which is more than 8 hours. 100 pieces takes 5 minutes. 1,000 pieces takes 8 hours. That's a huge jump. So what does math tell us about solving puzzles smartly so that we can cut down that time? Well, since the time to solve a puzzle increases by n squared, the best strategy is to break our big puzzle into smaller puzzles and solve each of those. For example, a 2,000-piece puzzle takes 4 times as long as a 1,000-piece puzzle, but instead we can solve 2 separate 1,000-piece puzzles. We cut the time in half. It's only twice as long instead of 4 times as long. There are 2 main ways of breaking a puzzle into smaller bits. First, doing the border frame first allows you to take a subset of pieces. In a typical 1,000-piece puzzle, the edge is about 100 pieces, 1/10 of the total. So the time for the frame should take 1/100th of the time of the full puzzle. And now that we have the frame, we've reduced 1,000 pieces to 900, which will be more than 10% faster. The other technique is to make mini puzzles by grouping together pieces that are part of the same part of the picture. So if you can pull out 100 pieces that are part of, say, a barn and put those together, you again are making a smaller puzzle that solves quickly. And remember, 10 100-piece puzzles can be solved way, way faster than 1,000-piece puzzle. One last quick technique to make your solves go faster. A large portion of the time it takes to solve a puzzle is finding the right piece. You can shorten this time by organizing the pieces by color, but also organizing them into the 6 piece categories of tabs and blanks that we talked about at the start of this talk. That way, if you know you're looking for a piece that has 2 tabs next to each other, you can ignore several of your piles. Now, most people will figure out these techniques on their own or learn from their parents growing up, but it's nice to know some of the math behind why it all works. Happy puzzling. This is Geoff Engelstein with Game Tech.
Okay, so I was listening to Geoff there talk about that, and the whole time I was on one hand fascinated by the math and the idea, and at the end I thought, that sounds like something my mom would have told me without all the math.
Well,
like she would have said, first build the outside,
well, yeah,
then separate them according to where they are in the puzzle.
Yep.
So but I don't know. Maybe Jeff's just validating the reasons for doing that.
He is, although the separating them by shape is a technique I have not used. You know, but clustering by color, yes, or where you think it falls in the puzzle, yes, absolutely. But the sizing and the positioning of the, what do you call them, the tabs and the blanks, the voids, yeah, I didn't think of that.
Well, we all learned something. That was really fascinating, though. It never occurred to me that a puzzle would take that much longer than the smaller one. That was really interesting to me. My wife is currently building the Harry Potter 3D castle.
Oh, fun.
I think you were with me when I got those at Essen, remember?
I know they've shown them off at Essen every year, so if you picked it up, that's cool.
I picked them up for the kids, and my wife's doing it instead.
Okay.
And I bought 2 big giant ones that go together.
Oh.
Right? I mean, you can attach them together. It's the castle and then whatever, some other part
and
of
like the grounds or the
thing.
Yeah, okay.
So she mixed them all together.
Oh, no.
And is doing it as one big puzzle.
Wow.
Good news, she has plenty of time. So
okay.
A couple towers have been built. I'm very impressed. And I'll tell you what, I am so impressed, I'm not doing my normal sneaky steal a piece move.
Oh, that's good.
So
that would not bode well for you, I don't think.
This is the one time. All right, let's keep moving.
Support for this episode comes from the Op Games, also known as USAopoly, presenting Harry Potter Death Eaters Rising. He who must not be named has returned. Lord Voldemort and his Death Eaters are a mounting threat to Hogwarts and the wizarding community, compelling everyone to combine their strengths against the dark villains. In Harry Potter Death Eaters Rising, players must summon witches and wizards from Dumbledore's army, the Order of the Phoenix, and Hogwarts to retaliate against evil Death Eaters and protect the wizarding world from the Dark Lord's corruption for good. Harry Potter Death Eaters Rising is for 2 to 4 players ages 11 plus and plays in about 60 minutes. Available now.
All right, Eric, we have not done this for a while.
I know. Remember when Tom said that right before Monumental that this is the last game he's going to talk about today? He was lying.
Well, I meant that's the last game we were talking about in the review section.
Oh,
even though this is technically a review section also. Alrighty, well, here's the thing.
Thank you for clearing that up.
I've been playing a ton of games lately. I mean, so many. And we're never going to get them all mentioned here on the show. Or are we? So, I got 25 games I'm going to go through. And I'm going to go through these as fast as I can.
Wow.
These are games that we're not going to see like a full review on. Although, if Eric has any questions about any of them, wait to the end. Because we're going to see how fast I can do this in.
Oh, okay. Yeah, don't interrupt me this time is what you're telling me. Okay, got it. I'm ready with the stopwatch.
I know. No, we'll go through. Then just you keep track up to one. If you want to come back and come to it, we'll do it at the end. But we're going to go through these pretty quickly. We hope. So it's 25 games in X minutes. I don't know how many minutes.
We'll see.
Let's see. I'll guess I can do it in 11.
11 minutes? That would be a record.
Maybe.
Okay.
Would it be a record? Okay. Well, I don't know.
It would be for here, I think. Well,
I'll just read the names. I'll be like, good.
Exactly.
Bad.
Good, bad. Thumbs up, thumbs down. We're done.
All right, are we ready? Oh, these are in alphabetical order, by the way.
Yes.
All right, so we'll start out with Above. This is from a company called Don't Panic Games. It has this 3-dimensional ringed board in which you are trying to move one of these gods around the outside board into the middle. Each turn, you'll play a card that lets you move a god, and the first person to move a god in the middle wins, but the gods move the other ones around. It's like a chicken game, And even though it's a cool piece, a good idea, I'm just not a big fan of that. I finally forced you to let me move a guy into the middle. It's okay. Alice in Wordland. This is a party game in which there will be letters in the middle of the table, and you have to think of words that fit a certain category. But each person also has a power. It's a cool game, although the timer plays the most annoying music I've ever heard, and I got to figure out how to fix that. Then we have Bananagrams Party. You know what? I never played Bananagrams in my life. I finally played it. I played the party version, which is possibly the worst version of the game. So Bananagrams is, I played it without the party part to see what I thought. I still don't like it. It's just speed Scrabble. Whatever. You build a bunch of words in front of you. First person to do so wins. Party adds in a bunch of tiles that let you steal tiles from other people or make someone else take tiles, except all these tiles have pictures on them and I have to keep looking them up to see what they do. Just a horrible idea. Bananagrams Party. Band de Monstrous, or Monster Band, is a game in which there's a whole pile of monsters all over the table that have a bunch of characteristics, and you're going to draw a tile, and you need to get your team to pick it, so you just tell them which one to pick. Except before you do that, you roll some dice, and you cannot say what those dice say. So if I roll color, I can't say the color of the monster. Or if I roll eyes, I can't tell you how many eyes the monster has. Which doesn't sound that hard, but it's going to make you want to punch the game. It's so frustrating, and yet it's pretty funny to watch and fun to play. It's for kids. Monster Band, or Band of Monsters. Butterfly. This is a Rio Grande game from Steve and Glenn. Really enjoy this one. It's a game in which you're moving a piece around. You can pick what direction you move this piece in, and you're collecting tiles. And then whatever tiles you collect are going to be giving you points over the course of the game, depending on how you collect them. Think of Sushi Go, but on a board as you move this single piece around in a straight line to collect tiles. A pretty neat idea. Chicken War is a game that is, it's meant for kids, but it's like a deduction style game. You have these chickens, and your goal, you pick one at the beginning secretly to be your leader, and you need every chicken that you have to match your leader in only 2 ways. So maybe they have the same shirt color and the same hairstyle or comb style or whatever, or they have the same set of eyewear, but they can only match in 2 things. They cannot match in anything else. And then you're also trying to figure out who everyone else's leader is. It's way deeper than you might think. Like, I don't know how this is a kid's game at all, actually, but it is fun. And that is where are we? Oh, I lost my thought. Chicken War. Clash of Vikings is a little game from Queen in which you have Vikings running around trying to collect treasure and hitting each other, and you basically do this by playing a card saying, this lets me move 2 spaces, and Eric says, I think you're lying, and then we reveal it. It's like Coup, but on a board. Crosswords. This one here is a pretty fun party game. In this game, you are trying to, hang on a second, my time has gone by. I think I have the title.
Crosswords, I believe, is what you're looking at.
Crosswords. Sorry. Crosswords is from Stronghold Games, and it is a game in which you are there's these words, these categories that are in columns and rows, and you are writing down things on these little discs and trying to match them. But you can do it in a clever way. So if it says, for example, boys' names and colors, I can write the word Fred, because Fred meets boys' names and red meets the color. That's very clever. Neat idea. Problem is, when you're doing a speed game, not everyone's that clever. It's a lot harder than you think. And writing erasable discs, throwing them in the middle of the table, and then erasing 9 discs gets old pretty quickly. Production value was and the game itself was like, wow, if you play with someone who's really smart, I don't think anyone else would have a lot of fun. But I think some people will enjoy it. It's just not necessarily my style. So that's Crosswords. Cutterland. It's a game in which you cut up cards, just like Crisscross Parks. In this one, you get a bunch of cards, and on your turn, Eric will take a card, and he'll cut it into pieces equal to the number of players. And then, starting with the person to his left, each person chooses a piece. Eric gets his last. You put all these pieces together, you're placing them down like a tile placement, and you get points based on what creatures you have next to each other. A dragon will eat the creatures next to it, and the kraken will eat creatures, so on. And you're trying to just score points in different ways. It does a really nice take on the eye split you choose. You're going to run out of cards after a while, but you'll get a decent amount of games out of the box. Dracula's Feast. This is from Jelly Bean Games. This is a social deduction style game in which you are like one of the monsters from the Monster Mash, Dracula or Wolfman or whatever. And you are just trying to figure out who everyone is. If you know who everyone is, you win. and you're asking people who they are, almost like a Go Fish thing, or you can dance with someone, show them your card, they show you theirs, things like that. But then each of the cards also has special abilities. Cute artwork, and it's a great social deduction, especially for kids. Draw is a draw and roll game, thus the name Draw. It has big, chunky dice. You get a word, like maybe Eric's word is Disney, and then he draws pictures on all 6 sides of his that reference Disney. Everyone rolls their dice. You can't see what's on the bottom of the dice, but you can kind of move your head and try to look around the board to see what the pictures are and guess what everyone's category is or word is based on the different pictures they've drawn. It's pretty fun, but it's for kids. Fairy Trails. This is a new 2-player game from Uwe Rosenberg in which you place tiles out that have these paths in pink and yellow zooming all over the place. And along these paths are houses. And if you close off paths, you can put a stone on your houses that close that path off. You need to get rid of all your stones first. It's a very relaxing, just mind-easing game. I found it a lot of fun. 2 players, especially with my wife. That's Fairy Trails. Hues and Cues is from the Op. And this is a board that shows, I think, 640 different colors on it. Like a big spread, like almost a paint swath. And you'll draw a card, and there's 4 colors on it, and it will show you on the grid where they are, like N14 or whatever. And then you give a 1-word clue, and everyone places a token on the color they think that matches that clue. So I might say plum, and everyone will put it probably on some kind of purple. And then I can give a 2-word clue, and I might be like, royal robes. And like, oh, it's a darker purple than we might have put on. Everyone puts it on. Then I put a little piece on the board, 3x3, and if you're inside that, if you're in the center spot, if you get the color right, you get 3 points. If you're right around it, you get 2 points, and if you're in the ring around that, you get 1 point. And I get a point for everybody who got close to it. Super fun game. Works grid for large crowds. It's wonderful. It's a party game that says things like, Eric accidentally was caught doing something bad. How does he get out of it? Here's 3 choices. They're all stupid, weird, silly choices. And Eric picks one, and we all have to guess which one he picked. It's dumb. Don't worry about it. King of Tokyo, Dark. This is the new dark version of King of Tokyo. I believe Eric reviewed it a week ago or so, or 2 weeks?
A couple,
I
yeah.
don't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's fantastic. It's better than King of Tokyo because it adds that Wicket track, and the Wicket track really kind of balances the game out and makes me want to keep my 111s and 222s. Other than that, the artwork is dark like I thought, but it has these bright fluorescent colors all throughout it, so I actually say it's brighter than the normal King of Tokyo, I felt. I like it a lot. Meow Meow is a game in which each person will have cards in front of them that tell you to do something weird, like pat your head or something, and you're trying to guess what everyone else's cards are. There's only like 8 or 9 cards in the game, and they're getting passed around, and once you can figure out what they all are and do the actions, then you win. And it works really well with kids, a little bit of memory and a little bit of silliness. Orleans Story is a sequel to Orleans. It's not a legacy game like I thought. Instead, it's a really, 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 really long game of Orleans in which you are slowly building up. It tells you exactly what to do. It is garbage. I love Orleans. It's one of my favorite games. Orleans Story is it's just awful. I think I gave it a 3 out of 10. It's too long. It's too boring. It kind of tells you exactly what to do. It's like someone mixed Orleans with Phase 10. Because Eric would be like on Phase 4 of the game, and I'm on Phase 2. Literally, I hate it. All right.
Wow.
Panic Diner is a food game in which you have these recipes, and you got to find the ingredients for them all at the same time. So you're grabbing ingredients and throwing them on these recipes. And when you do that, you throw these ingredients into the sink along with the plate that's the recipe. And these ingredients are all double-sided, though, so you have to flip them over to find the ingredients you want. But eventually someone's going to have to go into the sink and wash the dishes to get those tokens back out so you can fulfill more recipes. It's a lot of fun. It's a good speed game. Rail Pass is a game about passing. It's a pick-up and delivery game, except it's real-time, and you actually pick up the trains up. I'm sure Eric has played this one.
Oh, yeah.
And you pass the trains around the table, holding them, and it's like a dexterity-style game. It's more fun than I thought it would be. It's pretty difficult. It has a rule in where you have to say toot toot every time you pass a train. If you do that when you're around me, we're not playing the game anymore. But other than that, the game Rail Pass is super fun. Ripple Rush is a game, and my mind just went blank. What is Ripple Rush?
It's a rolling right, flipping right.
Ripple Rush is a flip and write game. Oh, you know why this one is forgettable? Because it has the same cover as every other roll and write game in existence that Eric complained about in one of our top 10 lists.
Yeah, you thought I was joking.
It's an okay game, though. You flip the card, and it tells you what number to write on your sheet, and then you just want to put all your numbers in order. So if there's a 6, and then I get an 8 of green, do I put the 8 underneath the 6, or I leave a spot, hope I get the 7 later, which I probably won't. It works fine. It's just the production value is a little lower than I had hoped for, and there's no dot on the 6s or 9s, which is very problematic.
You have to look at the shadow.
It's a fine. It's forgettable, though, unfortunately, in the mix. Solar Draft is a drafting game in which you're drafting different planets to revolve around your star. So that's basically the whole game. You're also drafting comets and moons, and each one gives you points in various ways. If you want to play like a drafting game that has like every card scores somewhat differently, this one is good. It's a little bit slower because of that compared to a fast, quick one like Sushi Go. But other than that, I really did enjoy this one. Spring on a String is a game in which you are putting strings back and forth. It's almost like you're sewing with these shoelaces of different colors. The problem is you turn over a bunch of rules that you have to follow, which make the game really, really slow because you have to make sure you follow every rule, and I hate it. Starlink is a game in which you are drawing pictures and having people guess them, but it's a big board full of stars, and you're using a white marker, and you connect stars. That's the only way you can draw a picture. So you're drawing your own little constellation. And if people guess it, you get points. That's pretty much it, and it looks amazing from Blue Orange Games. And then the Tooth Fairy game, this is from Peterson Games, the ones who make the Cthulhu Wars game. And this one has a bunch of plastic teeth in it. It has, I think, 3 or 4 games in it. I played every single one of them. Most of them are just meh, roll dice and get stuff game. But there is one interesting one that's kind of like Liar's Dice, where you're guessing how many teeth someone put into their hands. I thought that was an interesting game, but I still wouldn't get it unless for some reason you want piles of plastic teeth so that you can play Pandemic and there's just toothaches all over the world. And that's what I got.
Okay. So even with your fumbling over the name for crosswords, you didn't quite meet your goal. It was 12 minutes, 27 seconds to get through the whole list of 25.
I'm a failure.
That's an average. It's almost exactly an average of 30 seconds per game. So, I mean, that's pretty good. That's still pretty solid. The only thing I'll add is that if you want to see crosswords played live, it showed up on a couple episodes of Dice Tower Tonight with me and Crystal Pisano playing. In fact, I think not this most recent episode from last week. If you're hearing this immediately, I believe the one from mid-April will have us playing crosswords.
Well, then I'm assuming you liked it.
I enjoyed it, although I still feel I feel like I'm agreeing with you that if somebody is super clever, it's hard to be clever when you're under a timer.
It is. Doesn't it sound like it's the kind of game where you can make something clever, but it would take you time to do it? I don't know how else to explain it.
If something, to come up with that really smart answer is really hard to do under pressure. And it's easier just to write down something that's more straightforward. Or to double down on the easier categories, because you can put down multiple answers in one category, and then you're only going to score points for the ones that other people didn't say. So you could just pile on an easier category and get rid of all of your tokens and sort of spam that one and have a better chance at scoring points.
Okay, that was one of my problems with the game. I was like, what if you can't think of one for a certain category? I see you can throw one in another category. Yep. I don't like that, though. I mean, if you think of a few good ones, there's no rule against just throwing the rest of them out there. There's not even a thing. I could just throw anything. I could write green. Oh, that doesn't work. Pff, I don't care.
Right, and then you've ended the round.
And I found that to be problematic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, the rules are written like your joking uncle, who doesn't ever stop joking ever, wrote them.
It is a very casual rule book, yes.
And I don't really like that. They're like, oh, you think that's good? Wait till you see what's going to come next. Are you ready? Like, just tell me the rule.
Maybe you're not the audience, Tom.
No, I don't think I'm the audience, but I also think party games need to meet that very specific. Party game is a really tough category. Mm-hmm. And there are so many different party games out there that a party game really needs to shine. In fact, same thing with Ripple Rush, right? That these roll and writes, there's a lot out there, so they need to shine. And that's my worries. Like Hues and Cues, As soon as I put that on the table, everyone was like, what is this? This is cool. No one said that about crosswords. And when I read the book gives you these ideas, and every once in a while, I'd say like once every round, someone would write a clue, and everyone was like, yeah, that's a pretty good clue. That's a pretty good answer. But I feel like this is that kind of game that would get play tested with people who got so good at it that they would come up with all kinds of cool things, and they love it. I just don't see someone buying it off the shelf and enjoying it as much. Also, you got to admit, erasing all 9 of those discs gets old really fast, especially since they don't include erasers in that box. You have to erase them every single round.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
There.
I actually reviewed that in 3 more minutes. Oh, I missed one, didn't I? I cheated.
I think you got them.
No, I didn't say Metro X. I know I didn't. So Metro X is another flip and write game in which you are you flip over the cards. You flip over a card and it gives you a number, and you fill in different subway stations. But you want to finish the subway station all the way to the end of the line, and you have to figure out how to crisscross them because there's not enough numbers for them to reach. But if the orange and the red line go together for a while, I can make the orange line go, and then the red line can go off of that. It's so hard for me to explain, so go watch my video review of it. This one's very clever, and I think this one stands out amongst flip and write games very much. That's Metro X.
All right. You threw off your average. I think you just wanted to really, go nuts on Orleans stories. So
I really did. I am so disappointed in that game. And here's the thing. I saw all the negative reviews of it, and I was like, no, we're going to do it. And I couldn't believe how long it's like a 3 to 4 hour game.
Oh, wow. Huh. And it's such a huge box, too.
I don't know what I was under the impression it was like a campaign game or a legacy game, and I was like, oh, okay, fine. But it's not. It's just this big game, and then each player has a book. So you turn the pages of that book. Okay, now you're in phase 3. This is what you need to do to go to phase 4. And that takes out almost all the strategy because it's like you need to do this. So guess what I'm going to do? That. You know what I mean? It's just not. I don't get it. I mean, there's still variances in there, but
interesting.
All right, let's do some questions.
Good idea. Questions. Costas has an interesting request. They're looking for a game that can mirror a to-do list. So let's say Costas' daily to-do list has the following: run, do exercise, sleep early, practice a foreign language. And every time you complete those things, they'd like to progress at the same time in a board game. And Costas says there are apps that gamify to-do lists, like goal setting and stuff, but I don't like them, and I'm searching for something different. A board game that you can touch, have it somewhere in the room, maybe have a board map, and see your meeple progress in it at the same time as you do stuff in the real world. And they say they've been watching your videos, Tom, waiting for you to review such a game, and so far, no. And I haven't the slightest idea.
I put this in the episode because I don't know. Folks, we need an answer to this. But why would you want this?
I don't know. Like, you'd have to leave it out, right?
I know that there's apps that do this. There's a app that I actually downloaded and then I never did, which was, I forget the name of it, but basically it was like you leveled up and got experience points for doing different things.
Right.
And then I just never got around to doing it. But I don't know why you would want a board game that does this. But let's say you did. Is there such a board game? I doubt it, but maybe our listeners know of something.
Nah, yikes. I can't even think. Like, an app on your phone seems ideal for that sort of thing because it doesn't take up any space. You can simply quickly log something and make progress in whatever you're doing. To leave a game out on the table and then, I just vacuumed the carpet. Let me run over to my game for a second and, advance my pawn. I don't know. I can't even think of something that would work.
Well, let's get to a question we can answer here from Nick. He says, I know that native English speakers often pronounce non-English words as if they were English. Good example, Los Angeles.
Well, okay.
However, in board gaming, this is not always the case. How do I know when to pronounce a name as if it is English, as you do with Carcassonne and Six Nimmt, or the original language, such as Flamme Rouge and Bruges. Sometimes you even do half-half, like Wolfgang Kramer. I'm actually afraid I don't know what I'm doing wrong in that one. He goes, what makes you or other media decide on this?
Well, there's a meeting. Every 6 months or so, we all get together. It's Zoom these days, and we all decide how we're going to pronounce all these things. I have no idea. I think it's do you know the correct pronunciation? Oh, no? Then, take your best stab at it. And it sort of becomes, this is the way people say it, and so you follow along. I thought his name was Wolfgang Kramer. I think that's his name. Flamme Rouge and Bruges, it's only that we know how to say that. For
That's
some
what
reason,
it is. And I think Carcassonne has been said so many times that it just becomes part of our language. I don't know that if someone said it the correct way, I wouldn't even know what they were talking about.
Yeah.
You can change things, like toi is a really annoying one because I can never remember how to, oh, that's right, that's toi. It's not Troyes.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'll say it sometimes if people don't know what I'm talking about, then I feel like I'm almost being egotistical, showing off my language skills.
Yeah.
I'm a really bad pronouncer, so I don't even know that I should be answering a question like this. But here's the thing. I don't necessarily go out of my way to pronounce words incorrectly. One of my problems that I had as a child, and this is not necessarily an excuse, but I read thousands of books as a kid. I still read tons of books. I've read my whole life. I read super fast. But when you read silently, you don't actually say anything out loud.
Right.
So in my head, I would just do the pronunciation for all these words for years and years and years in my head, and that's how I say them. But I never heard them. I didn't have TV as a kid. So I didn't hear a lot of these words. I just read them in books. And I don't actually dislike not having a TV and having books. I think that was actually really good for me, except for the pronunciation part. Because a lot of words I never heard. And the first time I heard it, I was like, that's not hors d'oeuvres?
Yeah.
And Eric still laughs at me about that. But I didn't know. I just read it in the book. And you can say, well, you should look up words in the dictionary and learn how to pronounce them. What kid does that? A nerd? I was a nerd. I'm kidding. But still, that is what happened. Because I read so silently to myself.
Well, I mean, it's my job to read things correctly, and I still am constantly surprised by things I thought I knew how to pronounce, that I grew up reading and internalizing, and that I'll find out I have said incorrectly my entire life. And when I get corrected, I'll get pickups for stuff that I've recorded, and they're like, no, you dummy, it's this. This is how you pronounce that word. For the longest time, I thought the word was mischievous, when it's mischievous. And I got corrected on that at the age of like 39 or 40 years old, I learned how to say mischievous correctly. So it happens. You know how to pronounce what you know how to pronounce, and often you don't know when you're wrong. It happens.
All right, last question.
Michael says, as a longtime listener of the Dice Tower podcast, I've heard countless stories of you playing games with your kids. My two boys are now 5 and 3. I'm curious what your progression was with your kids playing board games growing up. You obviously play a lot of variety for the show, but what were some of your go-tos at early ages, and what did you progress to over time? I'm also planning to re-listen to the Top 10 Games for Kids show for ideas, but quarantine has turned my boys into needy monsters who won't leave me alone for long enough to listen, and there's only so much more chutes and ladders I can take.
Yeah, there's just a ton of them. You're just going to have to start buying a couple kids' games and playing them. There's no way I'll know what games your kids would like. I'm telling you, I bring out teams, we'll play them, and I'll go, man, that game was pretty bad. And my kids are like, we like it. I'm like, yeah, but you shouldn't. And they do anyway. Or the other way around. I'll say, this one can't miss. And we'll play it, and they're like, nah. But another group of kids might love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Blue Orange, Haba, Game Right, Player Entertainment.
Yeah.
Go for their games, and you'll be in good hands.
Yeah. At least you'll have quality stuff there that is better. I think just about everything those companies make is going to be better than Chutes and Ladders. But yeah, stuff doesn't necessarily land. And even at that age, 5 and 3 is tricky. I've mentioned before that my oldest did not really seem interested in games until at least 5. Even the ones that are like 3+, he didn't really care. Wasn't interested in learning rules, wasn't interested in playing the way that he was supposed to play. They were toys. Here's animal upon animal. It's a bunch of animals to play with. It wasn't, this isn't a game that I'm going to follow the rules to. So every kid is going to be different. Try a couple things and see what sticks, but definitely buy something other than Chutes and Ladders.
Alrighty, well, that's all the questions we have for today, folks. Two things, or a few things I want to go through here. First of all, contest is about to come. But before we do the contest, we're almost out of questions again. So send them in. Send them in to questions@dicetower.com, and we'll try to get to answering those in future episodes. Secondly, we're announcing a contest here. And this contest is going to be for a $50 worth of Cool Stuff gift certificates that we'll send you. You can spend them any way you want to. It's welcome to everyone in the world. All you have to do to enter this contest is to go fill out a short survey about the podcast. The link to that will be in the description of the podcast. So just look at the description, and we'll give you a link to how you get to that survey. It's just we want to make this show better. I know that we've been kind of in a zone. We've been doing things fairly similar for the last several years. And, we want to see if we can make things better or change, or if you don't want change or whatever, this is your chance to give us some feedback. So we're just going to pick a random winner, and we'll announce that in our next podcast that Eric and I do. That being said, at the very beginning of this, I asked for your email address because I need your email to tell you if you won. And I put in there, swear we won't use this for anything else, and we won't. All right, whenever you give Dice Tower your email address, I don't give it to anybody. That being said, we're working on putting together, this is one of our Kickstarter goals, a mailing list where we're going to send that out probably either once every 2 weeks or once a month, something like that. And we're still working on getting the formatting for that done and right. But when that happens, it will be something you will subscribe to. You say, I want to join this mailing list. I don't want to say, oh, well, if you've ever sent us your email, you're part of this mailing list. That's not the case. It's going to be something you need to ask for. But it's going to point out some videos that we think you might have missed. It will mention the podcast. We'll put in a little bit of content there that's not anywhere else. And just a little email thing that you can get in the mail. Hopefully it's something cheerful that you will enjoy as time goes by. So just letting you know that that's still in the works, one of our Kickstarter backing goals, and we're going to keep it going. So with that being said, now it's time for the top 10.
Oh.
It's a Dice Tower Top 10!
The Dice Tower's Top 10 list is brought to you by The Op, also known as USA Opoly, at theop.games.
Oh, 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 it's magic.
That's also a medical jingle.
You know what? O was actually easier than N.
Was it? I found O to be difficult.
But you have some really good games in your list.
I do, but it was a much shorter list than, so we also have P coming up in a few weeks, and that one was a lot easier in comparison.
What, you worked ahead?
I do them two at a time. If I'm going to be looking through all the games I've played by alphabet, I'm going to do two at a time.
You're such a go-getter. I should have said that when it was the G list. Yeah, but again, I don't feel like you have games that you're stretching to put on your list here.
No, but it was a smaller list. I didn't have as many to choose from, I guess.
Well, let's get started.
Number 10.
Let's kick things off with
You're on your own for this one.
Am I? Yeah, well, I guess technically. Onirim is my number 10. It is a solo, but it can also be a two-player cooperative game. It's sort of a puzzle. You're playing cards and trying to get them in sequence and unlock a certain number of doors that are hidden in the deck while avoiding nightmare cards. It's a very weird theme of dreamscapes and nightmares and stuff like that. But it's a cool puzzle. I've only played this as the two-player cooperative game, but most people play it as a solo. Onirim, my number 10.
I'm hoping to, by the time you've heard this episode, to have played it. In my solo marathon, I'm going to borrow it from Z.
There you go.
So, we will see. Alrighty, my number 10 is Ora and Labora. This is one of the big box games from Uwe Rosenberg. Very highly regarded. This one's a little lower for me than the rest because there's no luck in this one. I mean, what I mean is the same things are available every single game, per se. And it's a very mathematical scoring type game. But there's a lot of good things about it. And this is one I actually want to go back and revisit. Maybe I'll like it more if I play it again. But I do enjoy it a lot. That's Ora and Labora.
This one almost made my list. It's probably low teens, but I haven't played it a lot, only a few times, so it just hasn't really made as much of an impression as the others.
Number 9.
My number 9 is a game called Oregon. In fact, I haven't played the physical version of this. I played a lot of this online. Oregon is it's a very abstract game. You're playing cards in pairs that associate with coordinates on this map. So if I play an eagle card and a covered wagon card, I have to look on the outside of the board and match up the eagle and the covered wagon, and that's where I can place my people. And then I'm trying to place them next to features on the board or buildings on the board in order to score points. It's very mathy, very puzzly, but a cool tactical puzzle in trying to do what you want to do with the cards you've got. Oregon, my number 9.
Yep, I considered Oregon for sure. I felt like putting a couple kids' games on my list, so my number 9 is Outfoxed. It's a cooperative deduction kids game in which you're trying to work together to find out who is the fox who has stolen things, and you have to do so before the fox escapes off the board. It's a really well done game. Previous questions that may have shown up in this episode. This is one I would recommend. Outfoxed.
This one also came close to making my list. My kids do enjoy this one. It's a great deduction game for kids. Great.
Number 8.
My number 8 is Outpost, one of the very first Stronghold games releases. This is one of the ones they brought back from the abyss in their reprinting phase of Stronghold games. Outpost is an engine-building game for sure. You keep upgrading your factories and acquiring access to new materials that'll be worth more and more, and it's a real snowball sort of thing, which can be a problem if it's hard to catch the leader in the game, but it is really cool to see your system working better and better as you go and getting stronger and stronger. Outpost, my number 8.
Yeah, well, that's Eric said my problems with the game. It's an interesting game, but definitely has a runaway leader problem, more than almost any game I've ever seen. Old West Empresario is my number 8. This is a tile game in which you will be drafting dice to build tiles or activate them in your old western town. And you can build all sorts of cool combos. I really enjoyed this one. It's a lighter game from Tasty Minstrel, but the dice drafting is a mechanism I really enjoy, and I like the old western theme, and it's also satisfying to see your town get built. So that's Old West Empresario.
Number 7.
My number 7 is going to show up on Tom's list, so I really don't have anything to do. I feel like a lone passenger, just standing by myself, waiting for a train.
I had better connections, and that was the worst transition you've done in a while. My number 7 is Once Upon a Castle. This is the other kids' game on my list. This is a roll and write for kids, and it's amazing. You roll, and you're going to be taking resources and putting these resources in rows and columns. And when you finish a row or column, you can then draw part of a castle onto your sheet. And then you get points for having drawn different things on it. It gives kids that creativity to draw the castle kind of any way you want, right? But you get points for building the different pieces to it. And it teaches them some really good game mechanisms. This game is amazing for kids. Once Upon a Castle.
Number 6.
Number 6 for me is Obscurio. An interesting twist on the you're a ghost and you're trying to get information across to your team sort of game. The ghost player, the one who's not allowed to talk, is pointing out sections on cards that have all sorts of art on them. There are often hampering rules that force them to operate differently, maybe use a red filter over the cards, or they can only point at one thing, or other rules that make it more difficult to do this. It's also a timed game. The other players are trying to figure the clues out in a small amount of time. There's also a traitor that is often in the game. So a neat twist on something like Mysterium, a similar style of game, but this one has a lot more pressure to it. Obscurio, number 6.
Yeah, not as big of a fan as this one, but I can see why people like it. My number 6 is Oceans. This is the sequel to Evolution, and in fact, there's a lot of similarities to them, except this one takes place in the ocean, which I think is fascinating since so many species live there. It's a really cool idea, very in your face as you build your fish, you add attributes to them. And what I really like about it is there's 2 decks of cards where you have these basic attributes that you add that will make your fish attack better, defend better, or be in a school. And then there's another deck that you can get to that every single card in that deck's different. And so you can have extremely unique fish going around and eating and being eaten. So that's Oceans from North Star Games.
Number 5.
My number 5.
Do it in the voice. Do it in the voice. Do it in the voice.
Everyone, close your eyes. One Night Ultimate Werewolf is my number 5.
I didn't pick it just for this one reason.
I considered
It was my
not
number
picking
11.
it. I considered not picking it just because I am the voice of the app, so it's a little self-serving to say, yes, everyone should play this game. But let's take that away for a second. I think the concept of taking the werewolf game and turning it into a system that plays very quickly and runs without a moderator, because it uses an app to do the narration and call out the different roles, and also has the amount of humor that the system actually does have with the different variations of aliens and supervillains and all sorts of cool stuff. I think it's a cool system and a neat game, and one that has reached a lot of people who wouldn't necessarily have the time or the large group to play a full version of Werewolf, which is why it is on my list. Also, you should get it because the app is great. One Night Ultimate Werewolf, my number 5.
It's a good game. It was my number 11. My number 5 is Offshore. This game from Aporta Games is a really cool one in which players are building these oil rigs around in the ocean, and you need different resources to build them, and you can very rarely do it on your own. So you need to negotiate with other players to do it together. And I really enjoy that back and forth idea of working together, limited negotiation, and then there's a little bit of push your luck in the game. That's really fun too. So that's Offshore.
Number 4.
My number 4 is Ultramare, which is probably one of those names that I don't actually know how to pronounce. Oltremare. This is a trading game. You're acquiring cards that have different shipping goods on them, moving around a map, and the cards have multiple uses. You can use them for the goods and for movement and all sorts of different stuff. I like the system, and one that this one's sort of faded, and I'd love to see a return of Ultramare. Number 4.
Man, it's been a really, really long time since I played this one.
Yeah.
My number 4 is on Eric's list, and he took the card I wanted.
Number 3.
Number 3, we actually sync up on. That is the 2-player abstract Onitama. Really cool, straightforward abstract game where you have 2 goals. Either get one of your master into the opposing team's goal on the other side of the board, or take out all of your opponent's pieces. And you do that by using specific movement cards, 2 of which that are in front of you, and 1 that's in the center. So you do one of your 2 moves, and then swap that out with the one in the center. And you can see what your opponent can do, they can see what's available, they can see what you can do, and so you have to puzzle it out and keep yourself protected while still moving against your opponent. And that whole system works very, very well.
Yep, everything Eric said, I completely agree with. Also realize it's part of Dice Tower Essentials line, so there's that. But I wouldn't have put it in the line if I didn't like it that much. This is one of those little abstract games which I've played so many times over the past, several years, and it hasn't got old for me yet. Really solid game, Onitama.
Number 2.
Number 2, Tom referenced as his number 4, Oh My Goods. A small little card game, very portable, but has a neat system to it. Again, this is another multi-use card system, kind of like I said with Ultramare, that you're creating an engine, building buildings that allow you to take one good and turn it into a different style of good, and just using the cards to keep track of all of this is great. And there's add-ons that you can add onto the system by adding a story element to it. In fact, there were 2 expansions of story elements, and there's other offshoots of the game as well in the board game version. But Oh My Goods was the original, just a small little card game that plays quickly and has some neat depth with all of those cards. My number 2.
Yeah, great little game. First time I played it, I didn't think I liked it, but they changed one minor rule, which made it much better, and it's a pretty solid game. My number 2 was Eric's number 7, and that's On the Underground. And this one really, unfortunately, seems to have, well, for lack of a better term, gone underground. Hasn't really got a lot of buzz, even though the really fantastic new version of it just came out at Essen.
Yeah.
And this one, you're trying to get a lazy passenger to go to the stations you want them to go to using your lines. Well, actually, they're going to go to the stations whether you want them to go there or not. Mm-hmm. But you want them to use your subway lines. Since you're building subway lines to get this passenger, but you can also build subway lines to get points in other ways, forgetting about the passenger, and you have to kind of balance that. It's really good, although it works best with 2 or 3 players.
I enjoy it as well. Cool route building and trying to puzzle out the movement rules for that lazy passenger. There's just the one guy, and trying to draw him or her to your lines is cool.
And finally, number 1.
Number 1, we sync up again.
Twice.
And this is the non-stories version.
Yeah.
Orleans.
When I was done playing Orleans Stories, I was like, okay, listen, guys. Because they had never played Orleans. I was like, listen, Orleans is a great game. I promise. I'm going to play it with you all just so that you realize this isn't actually what Orleans is like.
Yeah.
I was really, really disappointed. But Orleans, this bag building game, every time I play it, I'm like, ooh, what decisions am I going to make this time? Mm-hmm. It is literally not a themed game. There's nothing going on there that makes any sense.
No, not really.
But I love it. It's that pulling the things from a bag, deciding which tokens to throw back in the bag, putting that gear on a spot just feels very satisfying.
Oh, yeah.
I just like every aspect of it.
Yeah. It really does. It feels good to get that system moving, and it's frustrating in the beginning when you don't have everything you need, and it takes multiple turns to fill up parts of your board. But once you start getting more drawing ability and getting more of the colors that you want, then it feels really cool to do lots of stuff on your turn. And then to start thinning your bag as well and getting rid of some of the stuff you don't want anymore, really focusing and fine-tuning your system. It's really cool. I love the expansion with the co-op version as well. Orleans, the best O game on our lists.
All right, People's Choice. And don't forget, folks, you can vote every time. You can go vote right now on the next top 10 list. You just go to our website and vote if you want your voice to be heard. But number 10 for People's Choice was Othello. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
I don't actually hate Othello, although it's one of the few games that I figured out, like the dominant strategy is obviously you fight for that corner. Mm-hmm. You know, you get the corner, but it's still a good, solid game. It's fun. Then number 9, Aura and Labora. Number 8, Orbis. Orbis is a game in which you are building your own little kingdom. You're a god and you're building your own world, I think. And you're drafting tiles. It's a pretty solid little puzzly style game. I was actually surprised it made the list. Number 7 is On Tour. This is one I have not played yet. I really should get around to it, from BoardGameTables.com, the same folks who make QE. It's a roll and write style game, and it's really cool looking.
Yeah, I've played the app version, which I think was free for at least a little while, and learned it that way. But I've only just recently picked that up and had a chance to try it. It's neat.
Let's see here. Number 6 was Oceanos. Number 5, Onirim. Number 4, Oh My Goods. Number 3, One Night Ultimate Werewolf. Number 2, Onitama. And number 1, the people Eric and I all agree is Orleans.
There it is.
That does not happen very often.
Well, I mean, that's sort of the monster amongst all the others, I think. Orleans is such a great game.
That's true, but I really do like On the Underground and Onitama. I thought they were, I could slide one of them around, but yeah, Orleans is such a big hit. It's very highly rated on Board Game Geek, too. So no big surprise there. So, yeah, a lot of fun here. A lot of good stuff in this episode. Don't forget to fill out that survey to enter the contest. That stuff really helps us out. Don't forget to go to our forums and check them out all over the place. The summer is upon us. New games are still coming out. It does not as many. Some of the companies have slowed them down. But Eric and I have a backlog of 700 trillion games. So we will not run out anytime soon.
Yep.
And maybe eventually when Eric is like in his 50s or 60s, his kids will allow him back in.
Maybe. I'm really looking forward to it. I've circled the date on the calendar.
You groomed these kids to do this. I don't know what else to tell you.
It's my fault, totally.
So There you go. Alrighty, folks, thanks so much for listening. Until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Eric Summerer.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode, number 657, was recorded on April 30th, 2020. Mandy and Suzanne are back next week, and then in 2 weeks, Tom and I jockey for position as we run through our top 10 racing games. Support for this podcast comes from listeners like you. Thank you for spreading the word. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. Find out more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Mandy, Suzanne, and Eric, with production assistance from Roy Cannaday, Mike Delisio, and Rob Searing. Our theme is composed by Timothy Pinkham. Those 10 miles of highway construction, where I've used some unsavory language to refer to all of the traffic around me, is provided by Car Cuss Zone. And you can get the latest on everything Dice Tower at Dicetower.com. We love feedback. Visit the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com. Email us at Tom@Dicetower.com or Eric at Dicetower.com, or follow us on Facebook. And of course, you can find more from the Dice Tower Network, including All the Bits, Men on Board, Cardboard and Wine, Sporadically Board, Board Game Design Lab, Tabletop Game Talk, The Family Gamers, The Portal Gaming Podcast, This Game is Broken, and Board Game Breakfast at DicetowerNetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. So I'm just entering this feedback contest. More Eric. Tom should be nicer to him because he's cool. Okay, I'm good.
That would be the first time I've ever heard that.